All right, greetings and salutations to everybody out there in YouTube land. I am your host once again, Dan Thornton. Hey, didn't have time to really set most of you guys know the Duke Crew Command Center is under attack by the wife. She's destroying it and redoing it. Anyways, a non-laughing matter. We've been talking about this ad nauseum for some time about the Detroit Lions. David Montgomery has indeed been traded to the Houston Texans. We're going to have momentarily here Hutch Jr. join us. He's one of the people that, as you guys know, have been on it. We've been talking about it yesterday. We've been talking about it in recent days, weeks, etc. That, yes, Detroit Lions have parted ways. So what we can say is whatever happened last year between Dave Montgomery and the Detroit Lions, we've been speculating for some time what happened between Sonic and Knuckles. What happened to divide Dan Campbell from using him more, John Morton from using him more, whoever you want to blame. Here's what we do know as of right now. Detroit Lions are going to get a 5th-round pick going for Detroit for Knuckles as he leaves. This is going to come over from multiple different people. I know everybody's going to say, well, is it only confirmed from one guy? Here's what I can say. There's no doubt about this, guys. Ian Rappaport is on that with here. My brother Tim, Queen Mary got it over to me, along with a host of other people in the Duke Crew. I was already getting ready to go on air with it, but let me see if I can make that a little bit bigger for you guys. We had all sorts of ideas why this relationship ended, what happened between both parties. We'll probably figure that all out in time. The news will break. We'll get over to it when it happens. All we know is right now, the tea leaves have been telling people for some time that the Detroit Lions star running backs may have been at odds. Now, in front of the camera, especially Super Bowl press row, well, you guys all know Dave Montgomery said all the right things. I love being in Detroit. I've already talked to Drew Petzing, going to be, there, going to, love being part of the Detroit Lions. Whatever you want to say, it just ended ways. It does sound like the Lions may have been considering the future of the organization. You guys all know Gibbs is going to get paid. He is going to get a massive contract from the organization. Brad Holmes has mentioned it. Dan Campbell's mentioned it. So could the Lions, we're going to have to pay Gibbs up here, help alleviate some of that salary cap by getting rid of Dave Montgomery and drafting or maybe getting a free agent running back whose costs are far more down here, kind of offsetting both. I think that's a big part of it. We also want to go back to what Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes said during their recent press conferences with the media. Dave Montgomery can be here if he wants to be here. Now, you can interpret that 20 different ways. Yesterday, we know that, Jeremy Fowler of the NFL Network and ESPN Insider, NFL Insider came out and said he's hearing Dave Montgomery wants out. Well, guess what? He was right. Dave Montgomery offered a rebuttal and said, hey, did you hear that from Dave Montgomery? And again, I pointed this out. A number of you guys pointed out. Dave Montgomery didn't say he didn't want to be out. Just did you hear it from him? We can all say now at this point, it is 100% confirmed that David Montgomery is out of the Detroit Lions. He is going to the Houston Texans for a 5th-round pick. Hutch Jr. is going to try to get over to us momentarily here. Yes, he is at work, so, sometimes you got to pay the bills too. Dave Montgomery, I think most would agree during his time with the Detroit Lions, hey, powerful running back, could get out and catch passes, run the ball, locker room hero. I can also tell you there were whispers, as we talked about it on this show, and I'm sure you guys heard it on 20 other shows, that perhaps Dave Montgomery had become a little bit of a problem last year in the locker room. As a coach, somebody who's coached for nearly 4 decades, I can tell you, when the locker room's a problem, it divides teams and makes the season miserable. And, it's just not fun for anyone. Hutch Jr., now that we know Dave Montgomery is a thing of the past, what are your thoughts?
Obviously, Monty, thanks for everything. Obviously, I think everyone respects him and what he brought to Detroit in the time being. But I think when we signed him 3 years ago, and then we drafted Gibbs, I think that we knew this was going to be the writing on the wall eventually. Obviously having that 2-back system was huge. I still think Detroit will probably look for a back, either A, in the draft, or B, they could sign one. A big name that I probably would love for the Lions to bring in is Tyler Algier from the Falcons. I think you can probably get him cheaper than what you would have had Monty on the books this year. But, like you said, man, once the locker room is compromised, it's compromised. It sucks because I felt like Drew Petzing was kind of the OC that Monty would love. I think he was going to get back to the run the ball game, and just unfortunately for Monty, man, I kind of, it's almost a slap in the face to Lions fans because like you give up on this team after one bad year. We had great years for the last 2 years, 3 years, and then the 1 year that you have that you don't get the ball, you still had 8 or 9 touchdowns. You were like 300 yards off your 300 or 400 yards off your career. In the down year, you didn't get the ball as much, and you were just, you just basically just quit on the team. Love the Lions haul. They got a 4th round, they got an O lineman, and they got a 7th round pick. So it's a huge haul where people were saying it's a 5th round value, but Lions end up giving 2 picks and a player out of it. So
okay, so I want to confirm it was a 4th because Ian Rappaport I think had up there a 5th round pick.
Yeah, so it's a 4th round. It's a O lineman. I think his name is Juice Suggs from the Texans, and a 7th round. So they got basically 3. They got 3 for 1. So the Lions kind of got what they wanted out of it. I think they got a little more than what people were thinking they were going to get out of it. So, but hey, best up to Monty. Texans need a running back with the injury news from last year with all their injuries that went down the stretch. So helps them out. But hey, this is going to be Gibbs' show, and everyone knows his contract's coming. So here we go.
Just so you note, Ian Rappaport. Now I have the update here. I'll throw it on the screen. And apologies for that, guys. I was going off of Ian Rappaport's initial report on it, but let's update everybody for it. Update on terms. It is the Texans' 4th rounder, offensive lineman Juice Suggs, and a 7th rounder for David Montgomery. So wow, that's a pretty good amount of return, Hutch Jr., especially now that we have the updated terms on it. What are your thoughts about that? Because I thought, man, if they could get over a 5th rounder, they'd be killing it getting for Dave Montgomery. And now you got a 4th, a 7th, and a player. Wow.
Yeah, like I said, it's a huge haul. Like I said, I thought maybe they were just going to get a 5th round pick. But hey, you get 3 for 1. I love the haul. Sucks to see Monty go, but if you're just going to quit on a team when the times get tough, then Dan and Brad, I don't think are going to want you here. It sucks because I think Demo was a huge piece for this offense. Everyone loved him, but unfortunately, one bad year and you quit on the team. So it just sucks to see. Monty's a good guy. I have no harsh words for him, but just to quit is crazy.
Yeah, I was a little surprised, but a little disappointed with it too. But, again, if a locker room gets divided, it gets split, it's just, it makes it tough for all involved. And, having only really dealt with it once in my coaching career, I can tell you it just makes it a long season. It makes it difficult for everybody. But going on for the Lions from here, we all know we're just a couple weeks away from free agency. This apparently is the first shoe to drop for the Detroit Lions, the offseason moves. What do you think could be next?
I would not be surprised if, I think tampering period starts next week. So, I will expect probably a center to be signed here very soon. I'm going to go off on a limb. It's either going to be the Giants center or if it's going to be the Washington Commanders center. I think that would be one of 2 big pieces that they get. I would not be shocked at all if they somehow sign another running back in free agency. Tyler Algier is kind of one on my radar that I would not mind to replace Montgomery. They might just draft another running back late in the rounds. Who knows? But I think we all know Gibbs can do the workhorse. It kind of doesn't scare as many defenses with not having both of them. But Gibbs can, turn 2 yards into 80 yards, as we know. So he's just as dangerous with or without Montgomery. So, but yeah, no, center should be on the top of the radar. And I guess we got to see what happens with this Terrion Arnold news. Is it fake? Is it real? Is he not getting charged? Because, if this Max Crosby stuff comes to fruition, there's been reports that Albert Breers came out and said that he expects Crosby to get traded this week. We will see. I mean, I expected this free agency this season to be crazy with some of the QBs getting released and D linemen and O linemen and stuff like that. So buckle up, guys, because it's going to get wild.
The good part is Lions obviously have added some depth to their offensive line. They add 2 draft picks. I was speculating, I think, right before you came on the show, and I think I mentioned it yesterday when the initial Jeremy Fowler report came out. My belief, it made sense moving on. I didn't want to move off Dave Montgomery, but you free up that cap. You also more than likely are going to bring in somebody at an incredibly lower rate than Gibbs and Monty currently host. So do you offset some of the, I guess, new contract you're going to give Gibbs by bringing a lower cost person? Well, if you had to guess any other salary cap moves, Hutch Jr., that we might make, who do you think is the next one or two that could happen?
Restructures?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Goff's going to get restructured. I would not be shocked to see St. Brown take a restructure. Wouldn't be shocked at all if Panay takes a restructure. I'm very interested to see how we play with this Kirby Joseph contract with his injury. Who knows what's going on with that. But we have some money that can be freed up, and with that money we have some pretty big things we could do with $112 million. So I'll be very interested to see what Brad and Dan do here going into free agency and this draft, because I don't expect this to be the last move for the Lions. No, I know everyone, it sucks. Monty's a hometown, everyone loved him, but I just think it was a good move. You got to get rid of him. You can't have him in the locker room, bringing people down. And it's just part of football, man. It sucks, but this is where it goes to.
Yeah, sometimes we all forget we all as fans, we get tied emotionally to players. They become our favorites. We get their jerseys, whatever. You play video games and want to be that guy. But the other part of it is the business side of things, where running backs, they start getting to a certain age, they start showing a little bit more wear. And is it harder to justify that salary? I think every Lions fan loves Dave Montgomery. Maybe I'm wrong with that, but I will say this. They made a move. They're moving on from him. If their plans really were to only give him like 25, 35% of the carries, from a locker room standpoint, probably a good move. All right, Hutch Jr., why don't you go ahead and give yourself a shout out to everybody where they can find you. Your impressive work. And as always, man, thanks for hopping on the show. Thanks for getting information over, etc.
Yeah, as always, guys, you can find me right here with Dan and the cast. He does a great job. Make sure you guys hit like and subscribe. You can find me on Twitter, Superfan Hutch. You can find me on Facebook at The Lions Den. And, go Lions, and, 2 weeks of free agency. So I'm sure we'll be on here a lot here in the next 2 weeks. So
that's my next thing I was going to say. I'm guessing this is just the first of many things that will happen leading into free agency. Well, the contract structures, other trades, people trying to genocide some players, pick up players. I think it's going to be one of the busier times for the Detroit Lions and Brad Holmes, Dan Campbell, that we've seen on this tenure. All right, guys, going to get out of here. If there's more breaking news today, I'll get it over to you as quick as possible. Otherwise, if you'd be so kind, hit that like, hit that subscribe, be kind to each other, do something nice for somebody you don't know. See you on the next Lions Talk Live. Take care, everybody.